حي على الصلاة حي على حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح. الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله.
الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونؤمن به ونتوكل عليه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا. من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له، ونشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، ونشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أرسله الله تعالى بالهدى ودين الحق ليظهره على الدين كله وكفى بالله شهيدا. أما بعد، فإن أصدق الحديث كتاب الله، وإن خير الهدي هدي محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم، وإن شر الأمور محدثاتها، وإن كل محدثة بدعة، وكل بدعة ضلالة، وكل ضلالة في النار. ثم أما بعد، يقول الله عز وجل في كتابه الكريم: أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم، بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون. ويقول: يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة وخلق منها زوجها وبث منهما رجالا كثيرا ونساء واتقوا الله الذي تساءلون به والأرحام إن الله كان عليكم رقيبا. ويقول: يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم، ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما. ثم أما بعد. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward those amongst us who have completed their Hajj, and enable those who were unable to undertake that blessed journey of Hajj to fulfill it in the future, inshaAllah. For it is an obligation from the pillars of Islam, from the foundation of Islam, the reward of which Rasulullah has spoken about very highly, where he said that whoever performs Hajj for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's pleasure alone, and does not have sexual relations with his wife, and does not do evil or sins, then what will happen? He will return as if he were born anew. He will return as if he was a brand new born baby, sinless, clean from the slate. So brothers and sisters, since we are still in this month, this blessed month of the Hajj, I wish to highlight two important and very big lessons that we can learn from this month, but specifically learn from the Hajj itself. And the first of those is that we should take the lessons from our father Ibrahim alayhi salam and his son Ismail alayhi salam. And we are all reminded of the story. We were just in the days of Eid, those days of sacrifice, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala informs us very well of his story, where he said in the Quran, Ibrahim alayhi salam said, "O my Lord, grant me a righteous son." So we gave him the good news of a boy ready to suffer and forbear. And then when the son reached the age of serious work, Ibrahim alayhi salam, he told him, "O my son, O my beloved son, I see in a vision that I offer you in sacrifice. Now see, what is your view? What is your opinion of this, my son?" And guess what the son said? Ismail alayhi salam, he said, "O my father, O my beloved father, Ya abati, do as you are commanded, you will find in me patience if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala so wills, the one that is practicing patience and constancy." So when they both had submitted their wills to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and he laid him prostrate on his forehead for sacrifice, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala called out to Ibrahim alayhi salam, "Ya Ibrahim, you have already fulfilled the vision, and thus indeed we reward those who do right." Let's actually look into the story of Ibrahim alayhi salam. From somebody who's never heard this story before, they probably think Ibrahim alayhi salam is some crazy man. He saw some vision, he saw some dream, and now he's going to go ahead and sacrifice his own son. And this is a very young son. We're talking about 12 years old maybe. Very young son. And then some people might think that Ismail alayhi salam is even more crazier to accept this and to allow this to happen. But let's look at the wisdom in the story. Let's look at the perfect example of Ibrahim alayhi salam of sacrifice and also importantly of obedience. So we find that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he ordered his believing slave to do this to his son. But we find that both the father and the son had fully submitted, willingly, without even questioning a bit. Ibrahim alayhi salam, he didn't look for a reason. He didn't think, for a second, "Ya Allah, are you sure? Are you sure I'm supposed to do this? What is the reason? I just asked you for a son, and I'm so old now, 100 years old, and now you're giving me a son, and now you're telling me to sacrifice him. Let's just take a step back. Let's look at the reason. Are you sure?" But rather, they both willingly accepted the decision of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And what is the reason for that? Because they realized that they are limited human beings. Their minds can only go so far. Their knowledge is limited. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is his knowledge limited? Is his wisdom limited? No, he is the all-wise, the all-knowing, al-alim al-hakim. He knows everything about the human being. He's the one who created us. So who would know more than him? But the lesson that we can learn from this is, brother and sister, to submit to the orders of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, whether we know the reason or not. A lot of times, we always like to ponder and think, why did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make this an obligation? Why did he make this haram? Why did he make this fard? Why did he make this? But we're forgetting that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he is the all-wise. He is the all-merciful. You think Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give you something that is going to harm you? You think Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to prevent you from something that is actually beneficial for you? And you think that you know better than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with your limited human mind? So we know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has many actions for us which are prohibited. For example, the riba that is prohibited, the zina that is prohibited, and so many other things. But brothers and sisters, we must submit to these rules completely without attempting to justify engaging in them based on our own rationale. Who in the history was the first one to actually use his mind and to think that they know better than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? It is none other than Iblis himself. When he was commanded to prostrate to Adam alayhi salam, what did he say? He said, "No, Ya Allah, I am actually made from fire, he is made from clay." He was trying to reason with it. He was trying to say fire is a better material than clay. So why should I do this? Why should I lower myself? But you see, subhanAllah, this is what happens when you have limited knowledge, when you have limited wisdom. And we see in the world today, when the laws of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are abandoned, when the people are trying to figure out their own way of life, trying to see, let's go with these laws. And the next year, let's go with these laws. And they do trial and error. And society becomes a mess. And we see when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's laws are left and abandoned and left on the bookshelf, left on the Quran that is collecting dust, when we don't use that guidance, we see what type of world we're in today. Furthermore, so that was the first point, which was to completely submit to the orders of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, regardless if you know the reason or not. Because again, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the all-wise, the all-merciful, and the all-knowledgeable, and we, human beings, are the ones in need of His guidance. The second thing is that as Muslims, we have a unique way of life. We have a unique deen. There's no other deen, there's no other way of life, there's no other ideology, there's no other religion like Islam. Right? And we just went through our celebration of Eid, and we should not, as Muslims, we should know that we only have these two celebrations. We don't have any other celebrations. Right? If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if He knew better, He would have gave us more celebrations. He knew better. He would have gave us more celebrations, and He would have allowed us to combine with other celebrations, but He gave us these two celebrations for a reason. Again, do we know the exact reason? Maybe we don't. But the point is, again, to submit. Rasulullah he said in the hadith that He is not one of us who imitates other than us. So specifically in that time, they were in Medina, so He said, do not imitate the Jews and the Christians. Right? But today, again, we have so many other ideologies out there. We have so many other ways of life, so many other isms, so many, all these ideas that came about in the 19th and 20th century. Secularism, feminism, capitalism, communism. All of these have a completely different viewpoint on life than Islam. But we have to understand, we have to first understand those ideologies. We have to actually understand kufr first in order to do kufr in those things. We have to actually understand those ideologies, understand where we live in, and what is the way of life here, in order to refute it, in order to go against it, and in order to see what does Islam say about it. Furthermore, Rasulullah he said that whoever brings something that is not from our affair, not from Islam, it is rejected. So although, brothers and sisters, we have performed the slaughter on the day of Eid, and we prayed the Eid Salah, and we enjoy those days with our families and our friends and our community and our loved ones, our hearts and minds, brothers and sisters, our hearts and minds will not be at ease due to the suffering felt by our brothers and sisters all over the world. While we may be enjoying peace here, we may be enjoying tranquility and serenity in these lands, we must not forget that we are one ummah. We have a whole other body to think about and to feel their pain and to know, be aware of what they're going through. So the food that we ate in those days should remind us of the many that are dying hungry all over the Muslim world, and outside of the Muslim world as well. The whole of humanity is suffering. And the slaughtering that we have performed on this occasion as to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala should also provoke us to think about the slaughter of the human being. The innocent blood that is spilled is much more important, in the sight of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala than the cow, as mentioned in the hadith. Do we think about this? Do we understand what is going on to our ummah today? Do we understand the tyranny and the oppression that is happening day in, day out, especially today in Palestine? So let us make sure that we do not forget the problems of our Muslims worldwide. Because as a hadith from Rasulullah, he said that he is not one of us who does not even have a care for his ummah, does not even care about the affairs of the ummah. Imagine you wake up, what is the first thing in your mind? Just yourself, your family, your work, all the dunya things. But in Islam, you're supposed to be caring about the rest of the ummah. It doesn't matter how far they are, it doesn't matter how close they are. This is our ummah, we are one ummah. And we'll talk about this in the next khutbah inshallah. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله ولكم ولسائر المسلمين من كل ذنب فاستغفروه إنه هو الغفور الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. أما بعد. And this leads us to the second lesson that we can learn from Hajj, which is that if we look to the Islamic rulings, if we look to the Islamic Sharia, we see that many of the Sharia rules demonstrate one concept. They demonstrate the concept of unity of the Ummah. And for example, the biggest one of them is the Hajj itself, where you have millions of people gathering, from all different races, all different backgrounds, but they have one thing in common, and that is Islam. And it is at this time where the believers, they gather in unison to worship their Lord, reciting the talbiyah, which the Messenger ﷺ recited as well. And indeed, one of the astonishing things about the Hajj, even for the non-Muslims, is that the people from all different colors, the black and the white, people from all different races, from Africa, from Asia, from Europe, to North America, to South America, people from all different ages, the young and the old, they're all united in the worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They all come to one central place. They all have one qibla that they face towards, and they're all united in that worship. And they're all equal before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So Hajj truly symbolizes this concept of ummatan wahida, which is mentioned in the Quran. This concept of the one ummah, that we are one ummah. We're not two ummahs, we're not three, and today we're not 50 different states, we're not 50 different ummahs, we are one ummah. Doesn't matter where you're from. And indeed, the concept of this united ummah, with no distinction, with no racism, with no nationalistic divisions, this is actually a fundamental concept in Islam. Sometimes we think this is a good thing, maybe it's recommended. No, it's an obligation. Obligation means you have to do it, and if you don't, you will suffer the consequences in this life and also in the next life. Allah Ta'ala says in the Quran, وَاعْتَصِمُوا بِحَبْلِ اللَّهِ جَمِيعًا وَلَا تَفَرَّقُوا. He says, and hold fast all together to the rope of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What is the rope of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? It is Islam, it is the Quran, it is this deen that we have that is a mercy and a justice for humanity. And on top of that, hold all together onto that, be united on that, but also, to add emphasis, do not be divided amongst yourselves. SubhanAllah. He could have just said it once, be united. He said, be united and do not be disunited. So he put an extra emphasis on it. Abu Musa narrated that Rasulullah, he said, a believer to another believer is like a building whose different parts enforce each other. Rasulullah, in this hadith, he then clasped his fingers together to interlace them while he was saying this. Right? So, imagine a building. Imagine if one part of the building is damaged, one part is corrupt, one part is, not steady, one part is not built correct. What's going to happen to the building? The building is going to collapse. The building is not going to function what it's supposed to do. And just like that, the ummah, if one part is suffering, we have to actually be aware of that, first of all. And second of all, we have to actually feel that. And ask yourself, brothers and sisters, how often do you look at the news of your brothers and sisters all over the world? How aware are you of what's going on in the world and your brothers and sisters? We have to truly ask ourselves this. And if we're not doing it, we have to then do it, inshallah. Just one thing from the letter of Malcolm X, when he went to Mecca, when he went to do his Hajj himself, some lessons that he learned coming from America, coming from a time where there was racism against the blacks. And he said beautifully, he wrote that America needs to understand Islam, because this is the one religion, this is the one way of life, the one deen that erases from its society the race problem. It takes it out. No more racism in Islam. Day one, no racism. Day one, Bilal al-Habashi, the black from Africa, he is the brother in Islam. And he continues to say that throughout my travels in the Muslim world, I have met, talked to, and even eaten with people who in America would have been considered white. But with the white attitude, that white attitude was removed from their minds, meaning that racism, right, was removed from their minds by the religion of Islam. And I have never before seen sincere and true brotherhood practiced by all colors together, irrespective of their color. So the rules, the ahkam of Islam, it promotes unity. It promotes collectivism. It does not, Islam never promotes this idea that we have today of individualism. Just worry about yourself. Just worry about your own thing, you and your family. Unfortunately, it's a big misconception. And it never promotes this idea of nationalism. I am from this country, you're from that country, we have this fake border between us, we're different. Islam never has this, never had it in the last 1300 years of Islam. So the rules of caring for your neighbors, the visiting of the sick, the helping the believers, and keeping the relations with the relatives, they all demonstrate this, and of course the biggest one is Hajj itself. So this concept of nationalism, this concept is actually alien to Islam, because it calls for unity based on family or maybe even tribal ties, whereas Islam, it binds people together on their aqidah, on the belief system, on this ideological thinking, on this ideological bond. That is the belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He is the Ilah. He is the God. He is the one to be obeyed and the one to be worshipped. And He is the legislator. He tells you what is right and He tells you what is wrong. No one else. So it was reported by Abu Dawood, rahimahullah, that he said, Rasulullah he said, undoubtedly, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has removed from you the pride and the arrogance and the kibr of the age of Jahiliyyah, the age of ignorance. Before Islam came, it was a mess in Mecca. And the glorifications of ancestors. Now, the people are of only two kinds. Either they are believers who are aware, or they are transgressors who do wrong. We were all the children of Adam alayhi salam. And Adam alayhi salam, he reminds us again that he was made from clay. He was made from such a simple material. What are you proud about? That you're from this country. What are you proud about? That you speak this language, that you were born from this city. Who cares? You were born from clay, just like everyone else. So he continues to say people should give up their pride in nations, because that is a coal from the coals of hellfire. SubhanAllah. So we have to be very careful, brothers and sisters. A lot of times we do this maybe not even knowing. And if they do not give this up, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will consider them lower than the lowly worm which pushes itself through dung. SubhanAllah. What a humiliating description Rasulullah gave of the people who do this. The people who are proud of where they're from. I'm from this country. And they look down upon other people from different countries. But this is exactly what nationalism is, brothers and sisters. This is exactly how disgusting it is. And we see from the history, so many wars have happened because of this. Because one group of people think that they're better than others just because of their skin color, just because of their race, just because of their nationality. And Rasulullah, he says in another hadith, he is not one of us who calls for asabiyyah, which is nationalism, or tribalism, or who fights for asabiyyah, or even the one who dies for asabiyyah. And there are many examples that we can go, but due to the time of the Sahaba anhum, where they demonstrated that they are brothers. They are brothers and sisters. Doesn't matter which part of the world they're from. They always kept together. They always had this unison. They always had this ideological bond of Islam, which is the only bond that can actually unite a nation. A lot of times we think, the other people, the other nations, they're just, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave them the victory, gave them the time. But no, they've actually went through this. They have an ideological bond. They have an actual idea that they're calling to, right? And that's why they're succeeding. But us Muslims, what are we calling to? Are we actually calling to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the obedience of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Do we actually call for this all together? If we do, brothers and sisters, I swear by Allah, we will be united. We will be, again, just like we had in the past, where we brought justice to the entire world, where we took humanity out from the darkness and gave it the light of Islam, where we saved the people from oppression, from the oppressors and the tyrannical rulers. This is what Islam is all about. Islam is all about this, brothers and sisters. So let us remind ourselves in these days of the Hajj again. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us to, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala unite us as the ummah, as one ummah. Ameen. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala unite us as one nation, having one God, having one messenger, having one book, living under one rule and one ruler, inshallah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala unite our hearts and allow us to unite only on Islam. إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم وبارك على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما باركت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم في العالمين إنك حميد مجيد وأقم الصلاة.
الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله حي على الفلاح قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله.
استووا واعتدلوا. Please make sure your legs are straight, shoulder to shoulder, foot to foot. Allahu Akbar. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين. إذا جاء نصر الله والفتح ورأيت الناس يدخلون في دين الله أفواجا فسبح بحمد ربك واستغفره إنه كان توابا. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله.